that overview and concept considerations to some case studies. And Natalie forced me to cut down some of my case studies, and I can't resist because we've got so many really neat projects that we're involved in. But I'm going to highlight a great collaboration with one of the world's largest asset management companies and real estate holders in Brookfield Properties. And so we engaged in a series of pilot projects with Brookfield, and we've worked with a few groups within them, and we do work with developers and owners and publicly traded REITs, private equity investors, plus the public clients and architects and consultants that I mentioned as well. But this one is interesting because it's sort of looking at as designed buildings across a set of developments. So we've got this one large mixed-use development called Pier 70, where there's substantial investments in sustainability in California, looking at horizontal or site-related amenities within this large mixed-use development. Looking at individual facilities, parcel A and parcel D, where you're looking at what are the implications to go into higher levels of sustainability, and what are the costs and benefits of trading up, in this particular case, going to LEED Platinum as compared to LEED Gold, and what is the value therein. And then looking at a few others in some different locations. But I'm going to focus on the Pier 70 project. And so maybe we can go to the next slide. So there's really two components. There's all of the site amenities we're calling horizontal infrastructure, and then we've got the building vertical infrastructure. And so the horizontal elements really like an amenity laden site. So looking at complete streets, a market square, and a whole lot of green stormwater infrastructure and public viewing and recreation amenities, different surface coverage types that help with infiltration of stormwater, that help with water quality runoff, that create habitat and carbon sequestration implications that create a much more a greater sense of community within this. And so the idea was to better understand how those characteristics plus a waterfront promenade and a waterfront terrace all combined to drive some outcomes, and what are those outcomes. And so we've got that on the next slide, looking at some of the implications. So really what we do when we create a business case in the software, yeah, you can go to the next slide. One more. Thank you. Is we're comparing something against something else. So in this case, just looking at how does this green amenity-related site provide value over a long-term study period. So looking at, I believe in this case, 40-year analysis, looking at the costs upfront on an annual basis, and looking at the benefits on an annual basis once operational. How do these drive value, and what is that value? And so taking science and taking empirical economic data, peer-reviewed literature, we're quantifying different design elements. So how does an extra tree or this type of vegetation or this type of paver, how does that drive value and sequester carbon? How much? How does that reduce urban heat island, drive evapotranspiration and reduce temperature in that area? How does rainwater, water quality runoff and pollutant loadings get reduced because of these investments? So we're taking the science algorithms, let's call it, and we're taking those outcomes from those design elements, looking at climate change, how do these change over time, and then valuing them with economics. And so this is the business case, and we see here, this total, if we look at the three phases, about 16 million in additional upfront costs are driving a set of broad-based comprehensive benefits. So this one's a little bit less about what is our financial return, and it's more about what are the community values created from flood risk, mitigation, property value uplift, recreation amenities, urban heat island mitigation, water quality improvements, education opportunities for vegetation, green stormwater infrastructure, and public health improvements from additional recreation opportunities, as well as the air pollution reduction. So we're quantifying, valuing these, and putting Brookfield in a position to understand the value that they're creating and spending this additional 16 million, but also allowing them to communicate those benefits to prospective occupants of the development and other, let's say, municipal stakeholders as well.
Yeah. And real quick, Eric, just to kind of pause there, is that while we weren't on, IncentiFind was not on this pilot, I can tell you the flood risk, the recreational aspect, any of those, or even is the environmental, the urban heat island, would that have been a green roof by chance? Just curious.
That was the vegetation around the set.
Oh, okay. So no, just asking because what we're seeing at IncentiFind is these community benefits for the property owners or developers should be communicated to the municipality, because that's where those property tax incentives come from. We house a lot of those. We're seeing cities pilot more of those, especially as it becomes related to things like flood mitigation in cities that are more prone to flooding, or fireproofing in cities where that, or I should say states where that's a little bit more rampant. So, your tool here, Eric, would be a great way for those developers to clearly communicate to those municipalities, here's the community benefit that we are bringing it throughout our development or across our phases, right? Or in the folks that we're attracting to further develop, our parcels of land. And, they could see that realized from the municipality by way of a property tax incentive, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably speaks to the facility example on the next slide that is part of the same development. So looking now, taking that site set of amenities and now looking at, well, what if we develop this mixed use facility and we take what's been currently designed, this LEED Gold, very high standard, but then looking at, hey, what if we invest to take it to a higher degree of sustainability, to LEED Platinum, and invest more in energy efficiencies and water conservation, improve ventilation rates, increase daylighting options, go through a more enhanced commissioning, and then invest in RECs, renewable energy credits, and carbon offsets. And in this particular case, taking that snapshot of incremental value over that long-term period. And again, in the same way, looking at, well, how do those investments drive efficiencies? What is the utility costs save, kilowatt hours or MMBTUs in nat gas of water? And what are the value of additional ventilation rates and productivity and health improvements and absenteeism, looking at occupant value and the value to the community. And in this particular case, driving substantial value through fairly minor investments, but looking at substantial benefits primarily to the occupants within this enhanced design. And we're seeing a lot of interest in ventilation and indoor environmental quality, obviously with COVID, but here's an example of using that peer-reviewed literature to better understand outcomes and the drivers of outcomes to speak to the value.
Yeah.